Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. It is great to have you in on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. Yes, we are doing a show Wednesday because, of course, tomorrow is Turkey Day, more commonly known as Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. Gonna do some, again, give you a little bit of Thanksgiving theming today, although we do have a lot of sports to talk about, of course. Nets falling to the Sixers, despite the Sixers, all their three best players did play. Embiid out, Harden out, Maxey out. And it was Ben Simmons' return to Philadelphia after all, the city of brotherly love, which didn't show him a whole lot of love. I actually thought, and I've been critical of Ben Simmons, I actually thought he handled it pretty well. Discuss that later on the show, as well as, you guys may not want to hear it, especially my college football fans watching or listening, Alabama is going to participate in the college football playoff, whether we like it or not. I'll discuss that later on the show, sort of the scenario that needs to happen, and I think will happen in order to allow Alabama to get in this year's college football playoff. I'll also discuss the 49ers and why, to me, folks, they have separated themselves from the rest of the NFC. Clearly and obviously, of course, you guys know my concerns about Jimmy G, but right now, that's the favorite to come out of the NFC right now, the San Francisco 49ers, after they dominated the Cardinals. I'll talk about that. And, of course, 3 games. Usually today's show will be on a Thursday tomorrow, but of course it's not Thanksgiving, or we're not doing the show on Thanksgiving, we're doing it today. But we got 3 games to predict instead of the usual one for Thursday Night Football. Okay, we got obviously a Detroit Lions game, we got a Dallas Cowboys game, and we got the nightcap. 3 very, very fascinating matchups, all with pretty interesting playoff implications. All of them mathematically still alive. Some of them very alive. Some of them, Detroit wins. They're 5-6, and they at least have a prayer's chance of making it in the NFC wild card. A lot of games to predict. Thanksgiving. Great to have you in. Before I talk any sports, and before I get to the Zach Wilson story, I would like to mention the things that I am thankful for on this show. First of all, most importantly, I'm thankful for my family, that always being there for me. My always have a great support system around me is very, very important. I'm thankful for you, the listener, and the viewer, for taking the time out of your day 3 times a week, or even if it's once a week, even if you watch one video during the month of Carving It Up. That goes much further than you realize. We thank you for your support. I'm thankful for the people. I'm wearing their hat today. Our hat, I should say, the Grid Network. Shout out to Barry Grant Jr., Mike Guido, the founders of the Grid Network, for allowing me to be a part of this podcasting project. I've enjoyed it. Also, shout out to the other creators, the Cowboys Can Fan Podcast. They're going to have a blast tomorrow in Dallas. They're going to be at the Cowboys game just like they were at the Vikings game. Go check out their vlog from Sunday. Patrick Brown, who I'm hoping to have on the show Friday, hopefully. He's on the Chaotic Sports Podcast. Great guy, great friend. Check out his show. Ryan Flowers, a guy I consider like an older brother. Clutch Sports Talk. Please go check his stuff out on the Grid. It's amazing. Alfred Parstar Jr., me and him were just talking today about the Zach Wilson story, which I'm about to get into. Rocket Fuel Podcast, and obviously Barry's podcast, the All Even Podcast. So listen, we got a lot of great content in the Grid. I'm thankful for the Grid. Also, in the world of sports, I'm thankful for, let me transition hats here, for my Boston Red Sox. We obviously had a very disappointing season this year, but this hat represents the 9 World Series championships we have, and belief remains eternal that we will bring many, many more. The Yankees own the 20th century, but as I always say, the Red Sox are in the process of owning the 21st century. I'm also very thankful for a team that made me very happy this June. That would be my Golden State Warriors, winning the 2022 NBA championship. Obviously, we're getting off to a little bit of a slow start. Big game tonight against the Clippers. But hey, listen, we're going to get this ship righted. As long as I got the best player in the world, Wardell Stephen Curry II, as long as I got Steve Kerr and the nucleus surrounding Golden State, we got this. Don't worry about it. We'll be back in the finals in no time. All right, so I'm thankful for the Warriors. And last but certainly not least, the hat I'm going to wear for the remainder of today's show, I am thankful for Dak Prescott. My man. Been supporting this guy since before he was a Cowboy, since he was at Mississippi State. And I'm a Tennessee fan. Thankful for my Vols as well for bringing a lot of joy this season, after even despite the pain that they brought me and all of Vol Nation on Saturday afternoon against South Carolina. But I'm thankful for all these things and many, many more. And so just wanted to spread a positive message out there. It's Thanksgiving. I know there's a lot going on in the world right now, all kinds of crazy things, but just enjoy your loved ones, spend time with them, tell them you love them. And just enjoy this time. I mean, Thanksgiving is honestly my favorite holiday, just because it's not that I don't like Christmas. I love Christmas, but Christmas brings a lot of, stresses about the presents and all the plans for, okay, whose Christmases are you attending, all this. Thanksgiving, it's the three things, the three F's, the three best F's in life: family, food, and football. And we will be talking a lot of football today, enjoying a lot of football tomorrow. Barry Grant Jr., All Even Podcast, shout out. He says, LOL, you are a character. That I am, sir. That I am. Hey, Barry, you would know this. We kind of all are at the grid in our own different ways. But we got a lot to discuss. So let's start with the Zach Wilson story, because my goodness, did this thing turn fast in the last 3 weeks. So 3 weeks ago, Robert Saleh was talking about anybody who criticizes Zach Wilson is an idiot. 3 weeks later, Zach Wilson is not even going to dress. Not even going to dress for the Sunday afternoon game against the Chicago Bears. He's inactive. Not even going to be the backup quarterback. So he hadn't just been benched. He's like, dude, sit down. It's almost like a timeout that Robert Saleh, the head coach of the Jets, is giving Zach Wilson. Let this be a cautionary tale for any of the young quarterbacks entering next year's draft or future drafts. And for the most part, from what I know, next year's drafts, in terms of the top quarterbacks, all pretty mature kids. Stroud, Young, Hooker, Levis, pretty mature kids. Like, from what I know, certainly about Hooker and Young, I know the most about, but pretty mature kids. But just for future drafts. Talent is not what wins in this league. It's not all that wins in this league, I should say. It's those little things that you can't teach. It's scoring 3 points, averaging, as I said on the show Monday, 2.7 yards per play against the New England Patriots. It is after a second half in which you amass negative 21 passing yards. All these different things. And not taking accountability. Folks, I'm telling you, that moment, not just how he played it, the locker room is already kind of iffy on Zach Wilson. But at the end of the day, guys, we're 10 games into the season, and Zach Wilson's 5-2. He's been pretty good. As a matter of fact, of the 2021 first-round quarterbacks, Zach Wilson has the best record. But it's after the game. It's those things in the locker room that eventually seep out to the media and seep out to the fans, seep out to the public. They're like, oh, that's why he won't be an all-time great. That is what is separating him, along with, of course, his horrible decision-making on the field, as well as his decision-making out the field, from possibly being a franchise quarterback. I've often made the joke about the New York Jets that they are the one place, the New York Jets is the place where young quarterbacks' dreams go to die. But Zach Wilson is one of the rare instances in Jets history where it's young, talented quarterback, and his failures are his fault. Not to say it wasn't the fault of Geno Smith or Mark Sanchez or even to a certain degree Chad Pennington or Sam Darnold in the past. Not that they haven't deserved blame, because they have. But look at the structure around them, guys. Most years it was terrible. Most years. For Zach Wilson, folks, this defense is fantastic. They've got not just the defense rookie of the year, probably a first-team All-Pro as the number one corner in Sauce Gardner, who's been a home run pick by the Jets out of Cincinnati. You think about Quinnen Williams, who's right on his way to being a Pro Bowler. All these playmakers the Jets have defensively. Offensively, got some nice pieces. Okay, we can make fun of Denzel Mims all we want, about the trade requests and everything and all the stuff he was causing trouble with the Jets. He's getting open. All right, those other receivers they have, they're getting open. Jets offensive line's playing well. Jets coaching staff is doing a great job given what they have around them. Did anybody have the Jets at 6-4, 10 games of the season? No, but even the most optimistic Jets fan, if you'd have told them this, they'd have been doing cartwheels. If you'd have told them they'd be 6-4, 10 games in. So the coaching staff is even ahead of schedule. And you lose a heartbreaker to the New England Patriots after one of the worst offensive performances of this year's NFL season. But after the game, you say, it is not your fault. The reporter asked Zach Wilson, for those of you that haven't heard the bite, he said, do you feel like, do you take any accountability or any blame for the team's offensive performance and you losing the game? Zach Wilson's response, no. That's what made Robert Saleh's decision. And that, my friends, is what lost the locker room. It is what separates the Zach Wilsons, the Baker Mayfields, the Johnny Manziels, all of these guys. It's what separates them from the Patrick Mahomes and the Joe Burrow and the Josh Allens of the world. That, my friends, is what separates them. Josh Allen, a few weeks ago, actually lost to the New York Jets, got outplayed by Zach Wilson, did not play well whatsoever, and used choice language after the game when describing his play. In other words, Josh Allen after the game told the media, I played bad. As a matter of fact, he said it's hard to have success offensively when the quarterback is playing like you know what. Didn't need help from the media to push him to that conclusion. He knows he played bad. Patrick Mahomes has taken accountability in the past, as has Joe Burrow, as has really any great player in any league. When you play bad, you know it and you admit it, and the team understands it, and you move on. But when you're a Jets player and you're in that locker room, you're like, okay, here's this young whippersnapper, if you will. Kid looks 12 years old. So you're already like, okay, is this dude, just outward appearance, is he ready for the NFL? Had a pretty cush upbringing, if you will. Probably wasn't told a whole lot that he wasn't, he needed to improve or things of that nature. Told how great he was his whole life. And the second he faces just a little bit of adversity, this is what happens. For the record, Mike White is going to be the Jets quarterback on Sunday against the Chicago Bears. Mike White is not even close to as talented as Zach Wilson. I'm not even close. As I always say about Zach Wilson, yes, he makes the easy throws look hard, but he makes the hard throws look easy. He occasionally, once every 2-3 games, makes a throw. You're like, wow, that was a nice throw. Put some zip on that ball. Put some arc on the ball. Mike White really can't do that. But it's the same thing that separates Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke. Carson Wentz is infinitely more talented than Taylor Heineke. But it's the leadership that does it. I've always said about quarterbacks, and I kind of alluded to this. I was talking about Russell Wilson last week. And I said, if you are an uber talented quarterback, but a crappy leader, you can still win games. If you are a great leader, but a moderately talented quarterback, you can win games of this league. But if you are, below average talent and a crappy leader, you're not going anywhere. Zach Wilson is, in terms of talent, I'd put him about midway point in the league, like about 16th, 17th, the most talented quarterback in the league. In terms of pure talent, he's not bad. But it's those little things that separate him from the guys who truly are franchise quarterbacks. And it is why Jets use Cleveland and use Chicago as your warning sign. Chicago drafted Mitch Trubisky in 2017, second overall in the draft out of North Carolina. And they waited too darn long to move on from him and regretted it. Same thing in Cleveland. Browns took Baker Mayfield, number 1 overall out of Oklahoma, Heisman Trophy winner. About 2 years in, you're like, it doesn't work. But they waited, and now they're kind of trapped, given that they waited too late to trade Baker Mayfield. There are teams that can give you a decent compensation for Zach Wilson in the future. Take it. Get draft picks in. Who knows? Maybe you're able to get a high enough pick to where you can take the future at quarterback. What you could do if you're the Jets is Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be a free agent. Go get Jimmy Garoppolo. Have him as like your Alex Smith style placeholder for about 2 years. In that 2-year span, draft your quarterback. Let him develop. Then he's your guy. Commit to Robert Saleh. Definitely commit to Joe Douglas because he has done a phenomenal job as the GM of this team. And go forward with that. They cannot become a championship contender with Zach Wilson at the helm. They can't. We've seen 2 years in the limitations in terms of just take it what the defense gives you. It's those little things on the field and off the field that Zach Wilson simply does not get. And when we see quarterbacks 2 years in that can't do the easy stuff right, do they usually correct it later on? Rarely. We've seen it after 1 year, Josh Allen, but rarely after 2 years. Jets, smart decision. Props to Robert Saleh. I don't think he had any other choice. He had to make this move. Couple of comments. John Rivera, who is a Jets fan himself, he's got basically, it's kind of like the shaking my head style emoji with the palm on the face. And Barry Grant Jr. says, I'm laughing at everybody who thought this kid was any good. Fools. And I was never, listen, if you don't believe me, check the tape. I was never a Zach Wilson fan. I said Zach Wilson and Mac Jones, and Lord, have they proven to be the case, would be the two busts out of the first round. Mac Jones has been bad out of Alabama, and Zach Wilson has been bad out of BYU. The two guys I like the most, Lawrence and Fields. I'm sorry. No. Let's be revisionist history. I love Trey Lance. Love Trevor Lawrence, and I really liked Justin Fields. I don't know what Trey Lance is because he's barely played, and that's probably what scares me about him. Trevor Lawrence, clean up the turnovers. You're seeing that progression from Trevor. You see the leadership that he brings to the Jags. Same thing in Chicago with Justin Fields. I don't see it with the Jets and Zach Wilson. I don't. So you got to move on. But props to Robert Saleh for making this move when, we've seen a lot of coaches in the past stick with their guys, stick with the guy that got you there. Well, what if he's not playing well? What if he's put 2 or 3 games in a row together and been pretty bad? The only game Zach Wilson has really played well this year, his first game after coming off of an injury, played pretty well against the Pittsburgh Steelers, albeit without TJ Watt. And then a few weeks ago against the Buffalo Bills, he was really good in the fourth quarter. Outside of that, what's he done? Essentially, what I described to you is 2 pretty good games, a bunch of bad ones. What's that? That's a backup quarterback. We would expect that from like a Taylor Heineke or a Cooper Rush, not from a guy who was selected number 2 overall in the draft. Today, Zach Wilson's a backup. And I have a hard time believing that he will be a New York Jet next year unless something drastic happens. Do I think Mike White's going to be the guy the rest of the year? Not sure. I'm not a huge Mike White fan. I would have preferred they went with Joe Flacco. But Mike White has put together some pretty good games last year. Just look at last year against Cincinnati. What did he throw for 400 yards? 3-4 touchdowns? He was amazing against a team that ended up getting to the Super Bowl. And now you're facing a Chicago Bears defense that has been just horrible in the last month. So this is a good sort of a possible springboard for Mike White. But this is a smart move by the New York Jets. We did get this report in. Let me see this pull up. This is from ESPN. I hope I'm saying his name correctly. Rich Cimini. I think Cimini is how you say his name. Who's a reporter for the New York Jets for ESPN. This says, quote, on the day he lost his starting job in dramatic quarterback shakeup, Zach Wilson tried to win back his New York Jets teammates with an apology. Under heavy criticism from fans and media, Wilson spoke to the entire team on Wednesday, admitting he botched Sunday's post-game news conference, the one in which he refused to take accountability for his poor performance in a loss to the New England Patriots. He said, quote, I had a sick feeling in my stomach. Look, and Zach, by the way, went on to say, quote, it was the only thing I could think of the last couple of days. I wanted the opportunity to talk to those guys and really make it from the heart. Listen, we'll see. I still think that the Zach is bad in front of the media, especially the New York media. I mean, that city, Charles Barkley, and I'm going to talk about Ben Simmons later, but Charles Barkley, I think, summed it up perfectly when he was talking about sort of these media markets. He said New York, Boston, and Philadelphia are easily the 3 harshest media markets in terms of sports in the country. LA media can be tough. Bill Plaschke can be, fair criticism, throw it out there. But those 3, they're going to be all over you. And Zach Wilson thus far has pretty much botched it. But we'll see if he does take accountability moving forward. I'm always going to give the person the room to grow. But there's been times in the past that a Baker Mayfield, for example, did, kind of botched a press conference himself, said he'd do better. We still haven't seen better from Baker Mayfield. He's still very, very kind of snarky with the media, very quick and blame deflecting. So I have no reason to believe Zach Wilson is going to change necessarily, but I'm going to give him the room to do so. if he is indeed willing to do just that. John says, all we need for Mike to do is throw for $175 and a touchdown, no turnovers. Against the Chicago Bears, that's exactly what you needed to do. I'm not sure Justin Fields is going to play. I'm not sure Justin Fields should play the rest of the season. Reportedly, he's playing with a torn shoulder. So at this point, the Bears are out of the playoffs. Justin Fields has been really good this season. Just sit him. You can get a high draft pick. Possibly a receiver. That kid out of TCU is a fantastic talent at wide receiver, or you could take an offensive lineman. Because the Bears' offensive line is bad. But I agree with you. John just says, all we need for Mike to do is throw for 175 yards and a touchdown, no turnovers a game. And let me see. I haven't checked the Jets' schedule moving forward. Let's see what the Jets got. Jet. There they are. Okay, so first of all, they are favored by 6 to beat the Chicago Bears. That seems fair, given the Bears' injuries. The Jets they got a home game against the Bears. Then they got to go to Minnesota. That's a tough one. They got at Buffalo, okay, home against the Lions, home against the Jags, at Seattle, at Miami. Okay, so there's some tough ones in there. Seattle's a playoff team right now. So is Miami. So is Buffalo. And so are the Vikings. But there are very winnable games in there, okay? They should beat the Detroit Lions. They should beat the Chicago Bears. Okay, that gets you 8 wins. Okay, then we're talking Jags. Jags are kind of an up and down team. They seem to play well every week. They just can't finish in the fourth quarter. Can you take at least one of the 4 toughies? Vikings, Bills, Seahawks, Dolphins. Can you take at least one of those and take care of the rest of the games that you should win? If you do that, Jets are in the playoffs. That's tough. They should beat the Bears, and they got 2 tough games. Then they got 2 winnable games, and then they got 2 tough ones to finish the season at Seattle and at Miami. So we'll see what they do. I think they'll get in. Barry says, Mike White won't lose you games. That's what the defense needs. I agree. Now, Mike White is, although, in fairness, his last game he played was against Buffalo, and he threw 4 picks. Now, the Jets weren't as developed back then as they are now. They did not have the defense then as they do now. And certainly Mike White is a year older. But I'm just saying he is certainly capable of throwing a lot of interceptions. But as long as he plays within the offense, within what the Jets want to do on that side of the ball, they'll be fine. They should be a playoff team. But the interesting thing, too, is that Robert Saleh said at his press conference that the intention is for Zach Wilson to play at some point again this season. So that's the only thing I question. What are you doing with that? But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I expect the Jets to win on Sunday against the Bears. Mike White to play moderately well, and then move to 7-4 and get their season right back on track. Moving on to a team that more than has their season on track. They are going to be just fine moving forward, to say the very least. That would be the San Francisco 49ers, who bludgeoned the Arizona Cardinals by a final score of 38-10 on national television in Mexico City. That, first of all, that felt like a 49ers game, or home game, watching, or at least hearing through the TV in Mexico City. There was a ton of Niners fans. Listen, Niners fans travel better. Obviously, the Cowboys have the biggest fan base, but then you got Pittsburgh as a big fan base. So do the 49ers, and the Packers have a big fan base. Like these big NFL brands. And, man, there's a lot of fans in Mexico who love the 49ers, and you could tell through the TV. But they absolutely put it on the Arizona Cardinals, 38-10. I don't think it's even a contest at this point. They are clearly and obviously the odds-on favorites come out of the NFC. Now, we know in the NFL playoffs, the thing that's really great about the NFL playoffs is that every playoff game is a Game 7. We hear all the time in the NBA or in Major League Baseball, man, there's nothing like Game 7. The late, great, God rest his soul, Bill Russell always said there's the best 2 words in sports, Game 7. Well, the great thing about the NFL is every playoff game is a Game 7 because it's win or go home. So the Niners certainly can be beat for a game, and that's all you need in the playoffs. Just win one time and they're out. But right now, I don't see a team even close to San Francisco in the NFC. I said on Monday that Dallas felt to me at this stage of the season, given what I'd seen from them and from everybody else in that conference, Dallas felt to me like the second best team in the NFC. Oh, but they are a mile away from the 49ers. Quarterback, edge to Dallas. Running back, and I love Tony Pollard, but big edge to San Francisco. Christian McCaffrey is a first-team All-Pro. Okay, offensive line. Dallas has played well, but I'm giving that to San Francisco. Number 1 receiver, CeeDee Lamb, Deebo Samuel. Definitely going 49ers. Number 2 receiver, Brandon Ayuk, who's leading the team in receiving, or Michael Gallup. I'm going Niners. Okay, tight end, obviously lopsided Niners. You're taking George Kittle over Dalton Schultz any day of the week. Defense. Now, you could argue that's a toss-up, but San Francisco is much better at stopping the run, and they're not quite as good at getting to the quarterback as Dallas is. But if they're playing from ahead, they can rush the passer with Nick Bosa, and they have maybe the best linebacker in football in Fred Warner. And that, I forgot how to say his name. The safety for them has become a star. He's fantastic. And Kyle Shanahan, you're obviously taking over Mike McCarthy. So on down. Okay, who and I got 3? I got Tampa Bay as my 3rd best team in the NFC. Okay, quarterback, I'm going Tampa. It's still Tom Brady. I'm always rolling with Brady over Jimmy Garoppolo. Okay. The running game, Niners. Offensive line, Niners. Weapons, Tampa is pretty good, but Niners. Defense, Niners. Coach, Niners. Look at Philadelphia. Quarterback, probably edge Philadelphia, but I'm not certain. Okay, but then on from there. Running back, Niners. Offensive line, I go Philadelphia. Philadelphia has a better offensive line than San Francisco. Weapons, Niners. Defense, Niners. Coach, lopsided, Niners. Okay, you got Philadelphia. You got from there, who you taking? Minnesota, probably. Again, Niners are better than them in just about every way, shape, and form. And when you talk about a San Francisco team whose game travels, early in that game, I think it caught a lot of people. It even seemed to take Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, who called the game the other night, off guard, just out of nowhere. Here comes the rain. The rain starts coming in from the roof of the stadium, and it's like, oh, crap, okay, this might be a little bit of an ugly game. Didn't affect the 49ers at all. Did not affect the San Francisco 49ers at all, and as a matter of fact, they seem to kind of embrace it. Because when you're talking about a team with a defense-first mentality, when you're talking about a team that's offense leans into running the football, didn't affect them at all. They averaged 5.7 a carry on 28 carries for the game for 159 yards. Jimmy Garoppolo, I have been critical of him, but with that said, he's been outstanding, or he played outstanding on Monday. Okay, 20 for 29, 228, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, QBR of 77. That's pretty good, and a passer rating of 131. So working on second and third and short situations, that's where the Niners win. That's where, again, when you talk about adding the likes of a Christian McCaffrey, and you talk about having Elijah Mitchell back healthy now, this whole team, Deebo's back, Trent Williams is back. Man, you want to play San Francisco in the postseason? I don't. I sure don't. Balance, scheming, having an identity, knowing what they are. Does anybody in the NFC come close to San Francisco? I don't think they do. To me, it is a massive barring some major injuries to their major players, knock on wood that doesn't happen because we don't wish an injury on anybody. Barring something like that happening, it would be a colossal disappointment if the San Francisco 49ers do not reach this year's Super Bowl. It would be. Because not only do they have stars everywhere, they're deep. You look at some of these pass rushers for San Francisco, they just bring fresh guys in off the bench and they get to the quarterback. Colt McCoy had a terrible night. Yeah, most quarterbacks would have a terrible night when your offensive line can't protect against that defensive line and when the secondary is flying all over the place. Again, the secondary has actually taken a Mufunga. Is that what's his name? Gosh, I got to get his name right. I don't want to butcher it because he played really well. Hufanga. Okay. Talanoa Hufanga, the safety for the 49ers, has played exceptionally well this season. The secondary stepped up. So again, NFC, who are you definitively taking to beat San Francisco? Obviously the only concern I have is Jimmy. It's the only concern I have. If you ask Jimmy to go win the game, if you're down 10 in the fourth quarter, if you're down 4 in the fourth quarter, you said, Jimmy, there's a minute and a half left. We've got 1 timeout. We're starting at our own 25. Can you take us 75 yards to win the game? I don't know. Even with all the playmakers, we haven't seen him do it yet. Again, I hate to have to do this, but I always have it ready. Anytime I talk about Jimmy Garoppolo, here's his playoff numbers: 160 yards a game, 4 touchdowns, 6 picks, 61% completion, a 74 passer rating, not even league average, but he has a 4-2 record because he has some of the best supporting cast around him, maybe the best supporting cast around him in pro football. I mean, if you put Joe Burrow, I don't know, put Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson or somebody like that on this 49ers team, oh my gosh, it's over. They might be undefeated right now. They might seriously be undefeated right now. Jimmy's my only concern. But outside of that, there is no reason that this team should not be in the Super Bowl on February 12th in Glendale, Arizona, facing whoever comes out of the AFC. Chiefs, Ravens, Bills, whoever it is, Bengals. Man, this team's legit. I think it's also really interesting that, the Niners now are in first place in the NFC West. So, and their remaining schedule, let's look at the Niners' schedule moving forward. Obviously, 10 games of the season. Okay, they got the Saints at home. They're big favorites over the Saints on Sunday afternoon. Then they got Miami. That's a very interesting game. Now, going into the season, we weren't sure how cool this would be. This is a big game. Miami going to San Francisco. They got Tampa at Seattle, Commanders at Vegas, and then finishing at home against the Cardinals. There's some gimmies, if you will. They should beat the Saints. They should beat, Vegas. They probably should beat Washington as well as Arizona. But, you got Tampa in there. Seattle's no easy out. Neither is Miami. So this Niners team, though, feels like they're the favorite, certainly to win the NFC West, but I think to win the NFC. You want to play them? Would you rather face the Niners or the Cowboys or the Buccaneers or the Eagles or the Vikings? I'll face any of those four. I'll face the San Francisco 49ers without a question. But moving, our only NBA topic of the day is an interesting one. So the Philadelphia 76ers beat the Brooklyn Nets 115-106. Nets dropped to 8-10, and this season's been a total disaster for the Nets. Not really much of a surprise to anyone. They're just flat up not a very good basketball team. But Ben Simmons made his return to Philadelphia, and I will have to say, and you guys know, nobody, maybe on any podcast, TV show, radio show, whatever, media consumption, article, I don't think anybody has been more critical of Ben Simmons than yours truly. But I give credit where credit's due on this show. And given the moment, given the noise around him, I actually thought Ben Simmons did a pretty good job, not only on the court, but in terms of controlling what he can control, not letting the crowd get to him too much. Again, you look at his stat line, it's not bad. 4 for 7, 11 points, 11 assists, 7 rebounds. Like, that's about what we expect from Ben Simmons with the Brooklyn Nets. You're never going to get that, and we knew this years ago, but you're never going to get that number one pick type talent from Ben Simmons. Because Ben Simmons has the talent to be a top 10 player in the NBA. But he's never going to be that because he lacks the intangibles. He is a 2, or best case, a 3 on a championship contender. In this case, he's a 3 on a team that may not even go to the playoffs. But bigger picture for the Brooklyn Nets. Kevin Durant don't want to be there. It doesn't take very long when you're watching the Nets play, especially the second halves of games, because that's when your legs get more tired and you've battled on both sides of the floor, especially when you're on the road. Look at KD's body language. And KD's a good defender, but look at him on defense. Kevin Durant does not want to be a Brooklyn Net. He made that clear this summer when he requested a trade from Brooklyn. Okay. I think it heightened even more when Kyrie Irving got into yet another controversy. It heightened even more when the Nets didn't fire Steve Nash or Sean Marks, just to go ahead and fire Steve Nash early in this season. And in Kevin Durant's eyes, he's like, well, why didn't you do that before the season? Why do we have to waste our first 10 games to figure that out, that we don't need Steve Nash? And Kevin Durant certainly deserves blame for his, I wouldn't say lackluster play. He is averaging 30 for crying out loud. But Kevin doesn't want to be there. And listen, I will continue to recruit one Kevin Durant back to my Golden State Warriors until proven otherwise. He is more than welcome back because, as I said last week, KD needs the Warriors right now, and the Warriors need KD way more than was the case in 2016. Golden State was going to win the championship in 2017 with or without Durant. But now, listen, both sides need each other because guess what? Both sides are 8-10. Now, Golden State obviously has a much better future ahead in terms of this season. Clay looks like he's back, gotten his legs. He's had one good game against the Knicks, one great game against the Rockets on Sunday, 41 points on 10 threes. Steph Curry, we know what he represents. He's going to put you to bed every other night. Okay, Draymond's doing what Draymond has always done. The stat sheet has never been a good indicator of how well he plays and how much he controls the pace and the tempo and controlling both sides of the floor every single game. Wiggins is going to give you 18, 7, and great defense. The question for the Warriors is defense and the bench. Get those right, they'll be right back in the finals. But it goes back, I mentioned Kyrie Irving, and he just played his second game since coming back from his suspension for the Brooklyn Nets. I'm telling you, guys, I've been trying to say this. I did a whole segment on it last week about how Kyrie Irving has never been a winning player, how you are actually better without him than with him, which seems oxymoronic considering his undeniable talent on the court. Brooklyn Nets, defensively, during the Kyrie suspension, they gave up 104 points a game. The other team shot 35% from three-point range. Since Kyrie has returned, they've gone from giving up 104 points per game to 115 points per game. They've gone from giving up a 35% three-point percentage to giving up a 40% three-point percentage. So, right back comes Kyrie Irving, and right back comes the Brooklyn Nets defense into being atrocious. Without him, they were a top 10 defense in the league. With him, they're awful. So, I would be, if you were listening to the show and you were in a time machine, or you were watching the show in April of 2023, and you could somehow tell me, hey, Bryson, this team is going to be together. Kevin, Kyrie, Simmons, everybody else, they're still going to be here come April. I'd be stunned. Stunned because KD doesn't want to be there. Reportedly, I read the other day, the Nets are actively trying to move Kyrie, which I've been saying that. I said that during the suspension. Use that as your opportunity to trade him. And Ben Simmons, likely they'll just keep him around, see if they can develop him into a number 2 type star while they try and get some draft picks and then just see what happens with him. He's on a long contract. He'll be there for the foreseeable future. But if you're Brooklyn and you want any chance whatsoever to be even relevant, you have to trade Kevin Durant. It'll be better for Kevin. It'll be better for Brooklyn. And please trade Kyrie Irving. If anything, I'd trade Kyrie before I'd trade KD. If anything, I would trade Kyrie and give it a whole month. You had 8 games of Kyrie being gone. So a decent level sample size in which you saw improvements on both sides of the floor. But say they trade him in mid-December. Wait till mid-January. Play a whole month. See what you got. The KD, Simmons, Royce O'Neal Nets. With Patty Mills, with Nick Claxton, with Seth Curry, Joe Harris. See how it works. If it doesn't, okay, now you move Kevin. Now you move Kevin to a contender and get a lot of assets in return and rebuild your franchise. But if you are hoping that this group is going to contend for a championship, well, you're going to be pretty disappointed by season's end because this team is not going anywhere. Again, not even certain they're going to make the playoffs. They have Kevin Durant, so they probably will because Kevin's a top 5 player in basketball. But if they get there, it's probably going to be the same result as last year because they'll face either Milwaukee or Boston, and just like Boston did to them last year, they'll get swept. So if you're the Nets, look out for your own best interest, and you can still look out for the best interest of Kevin Durant as well. Get assets in return for him, send him to a contender, which is what he clearly wants to do. He wants to get back in the championship discussion. He's never going to do that in Brooklyn. Just allow him the opportunity to go elsewhere and compete for championships again. Because Kevin Durant is a guy who has earned the right to, year in and year out, being in his prime, compete for titles. And Lord knows he'll be doing a lot of that if he returns to Golden State. Again, it's like the prodigal son. We're always, no matter how much you've wronged us, Kevin, and it wasn't as much as people give it credit for, you are always welcome home. But to college football for a moment, because there's something going on here that is oh so fascinating. And I was really curious when I watched the playoff committee last night, when I watched them do the college football playoff rankings last night. There was two things I'm looking for. One, if my Vols dropped out of the top 10. We did not. We're still 10. Let's go. Let's take care of Vandy this Saturday, guys. And then secondly, and more importantly in the bigger landscape, what they do with number 7. The top 6 to me were pretty obvious. Like I put out, and I'll put it on the screen again. My top 6 mirrors exactly to a T what the playoff committee's top 6 were. So this is the top 6: Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, LSU, USC. Like there you go. Like that's the top 6. We all pretty much agree on that. But who was number 7? Could it be Oregon? Could they jump back up after losing that game against Washington a couple weeks back? Could it be Clemson? I mean, they only have one loss. Could Tennessee be easily forgiven for giving up 63 points to South Carolina? No, and they shouldn't be, coming from a Vols fan. Or would it be the team who so often we are used to being in this very spotlight? And that is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama is number 7. Folks, I'm going to look dead into this camera and say this. The Alabama Crimson Tide will participate in this season's college football playoff. Book it. Whether you or I like it or not, they will be in it. When you look at Alabama's season, it's been weird. Weirder than most Alabama seasons. First of all, to me, the biggest shock for Alabama this year, how many games are they going to have double-digit penalties? I mean, they had that game against Texas. They had, 15 penalties? Like Nick Saban teams? Same thing against Tennessee, against LSU. They even had a little bit of a penalty issue against Ole Miss. It's like, what is going on with this? Number 2, Alabama, who famously, for the majority of this dynasty, was never reliant on their quarterback being amazing, is now, when they don't have Bryce Young, they're kind of awful offensively. Look at them against Arkansas when Bryce Young went out, and then against Texas A&M when Bryce missed the entire game due to shoulder injury. I don't know. I mean, that Milroe kid, he's jacked, okay? He's built like a tank, but he can't play quarterback. Like, he's bad. They need Bryce Young. But we know that there is an SEC bias in the College Football Playoff Committee. By the way, I have no issue with that because the SEC is by, I wouldn't say a mile because the Pac-12 has been really good this year, but by a pretty comfortable margin is still the best conference in college football. They get the best recruits. They play the biggest games. They play the toughest schedules. Year in and year out, they're always in the national championship game. An SEC team always gets there. In some cases, it's been 2 SEC teams like last year. They're without a doubt, everybody knows this, the best conference in college football. Alabama has proven time and time again that anytime, think about 2017 when I was one of those who said, hey, why isn't Ohio State in the playoff? Okay, they've looked better on film than Alabama. Bama struggled against inferior opponents. Ohio State won the Big Ten championship game convincingly, but what did the committee say? They have 2 losses, but more importantly, we just trust Alabama more. And what happened that season? Alabama won the national championship. And you say, well, how's Alabama going to get in? And Bryce, you're not making a whole lot of sense here. Okay, well, it makes sense. Here's Alabama's path to the playoff. So first of all, they got to take care of their end of the bargain. They got to beat Auburn. They're going to do that. They're going to do that easily. They're 22-point favorites. I usually say in these type of games, stay away from these lines. But Alabama is at home where they're almost unbeatable. and they're facing 5-6 Auburn. If you watched Auburn this season, I hate to hear that because they've sucked. They're looking for a new head coach. It's been a disaster for Auburn. Bama beats Auburn convincingly, okay? USC plays 2 games the rest of the season. So they've got Notre Dame. What do we know about Notre Dame? They're on a little bit of a winning streak here. This is not the same Notre Dame Marcus Freeman coach team that lost to Marshall earlier this season. Okay? This is not that same Notre Dame team. This Notre Dame team runs it down your throat, doesn't care, is not afraid of the big moment. They play big games on NBC every Saturday, and they will be looking to end USC season. USC is coming off of just a emotional, crazy game of the weekend in college football, beating UCLA last week. Caleb Williams, Lincoln Riley, everybody is getting praised, talking about how great they are and how, oh my goodness, USC is going to make the college football playoff. Well, they've got Notre Dame on Saturday. And even if they beat Notre Dame, they will likely have to face Oregon. And outside of Georgia, Oregon should probably have won every single game they played this year. Bo Nix is a playmaker. That defense is no joke. So USC's got to play Notre Dame and likely Oregon their last 2 games. Is it crazy to say they'll lose one of those 2? I'd say it's more likely they used to lose to Notre Dame. And I think they will on Saturday. What's the third thing? Michigan needs to lose to Ohio State. Why you say, one of those teams are going to lose because they play each other. They're 2 and obviously number 2, Ohio State, number 3, Michigan. What about Ohio State? Well, the reason I say Michigan is because Ohio State has a much better resume than Michigan does. Okay? Both teams smacked Penn State. The difference is Ohio State beat Notre Dame. So, impressive home win against the team that is currently in the top 15, Notre Dame, and they both have a common win over Penn State. Except I think Ohio State actually had to go to Penn State. Michigan's, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was at home. So Michigan loses to Ohio State. You're telling me one-loss Michigan, and let's say they get smoked by Ohio State, right? Blake Corum likely isn't going to be able to play. J.J. McCarthy, their quarterback, really struggled against Illinois. I don't know. You're telling me that their resume stacked up against Alabama's is the same because neither would be a division champ. And Michigan's loss would have come to Ohio State likely in blowout fashion. Alabama's 2 losses would come to currently 10th-ranked Tennessee on a walk-off field goal. Thank you, Chase McGrath. And to 5th-ranked LSU on the road on a 2-point conversion. If Chase McGrath misses that field goal, and if Jaden Daniels doesn't hit Mason Taylor for a 2-point conversion, Alabama's probably undefeated. And they're probably sitting there as the number 1 or number 2 team in the country. So their resume would be better than Michigan's. Fourth thing, LSU loses to Georgia. This looks increasingly likely. You say, well, I mean, come on, Bryce. Like, Georgia only beat Kentucky by 10. And they only beat Missouri by 4. Yeah, you know what I know about Georgia? Here's what I know about the Georgia Bulldogs, the defending national champions. When it's time to play, when it's games that everybody's got their eyes on, number 1 game of the weekend, they make an example out of their opponent. They embarrass them. What they did to Oregon was just short of child abuse. 49-3. What they did to my Vols a few weeks ago was just downright wrong. And that was when Tennessee was at that point the number 1 team in the country. And Georgia dominated them for 60 minutes, for 3.5 hours. So Georgia is going to dominate LSU in the SEC championship game. Okay? LSU a couple weeks ago, faced Arkansas, who had just lost to Liberty. LSU beat them by 3. Okay? LSU was in a dogfight with Florida for a long time during that game. They got smoked at home by Tennessee, who Georgia smoked. Georgia's going to beat LSU. So that takes LSU out of the mix because they're a 3-loss team compared to Bama's 2 losses. And then TCU. Now, this one I think is the least important. TCU to me is the least important player in this situation in order for Alabama to get into the college football playoff. TCU, though, it would certainly help Alabama if they lose one of their remaining 2 games. Because if you look at TCU where they're sitting right now, okay, this weekend they're taking on Iowa State. They should win that game pretty easily. Iowa State's 4-7. They're not a very good football team. TCU should win pretty easily. But then, in all likelihood, they will face Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game. Now, Kansas State, as it stands right now, is ranked 12th. They played really good football this season. They're favored to win their 9th game of the year, finished 9-3. That is a tough game, probably the toughest game for TCU all season, either that or Texas. So there's a good opportunity for TCU to lose in the Big 12 championship game. You think the committee's going to favor TCU over Alabama? I'm telling you, should all of this occur, the Alabama Crimson Tide will, without question, secure a spot in the college football playoff. You may not like it. I'm not an Alabama fan whatsoever. Not in the slightest, okay? It brought me great joy what my Vols did to them. And listen, if for the record, I've always respected Alabama. I don't necessarily hate Alabama as much as I dislike their fans, because their fans are just the worst. They really are. But I am very thankful on this Thanksgiving of what my Vols did to them this year. That said, it took a walk-off field goal. It took for LSU to beat them, to go for 2. Probably the gutsiest play call of the college football season by Brian Kelly, going for 2 against, at the time, I think number 6 ranked Alabama. I'm sorry, but if all of these occur, what would the playoff rankings look like? I don't have the graphic right here in front of me, but it would likely be Georgia, Ohio State, but it would be the obvious number 1, number 2. And then the debate becomes between Alabama. You still certainly have to look at TCU if they're 1 loss. If TCU's undefeated, TCU's in. Like, there's no question about it. You can't punish an undefeated team in the Power 5. Now, outside the Power 5, I got a big issue with Cincinnati getting in the college football playoff last year. Hated it, and that was the only game in my life that I've rooted for Alabama. And they did. They won convincingly in that game. But if you go undefeated in the Power 5, I don't care what your schedule is, you're in the college football playoff. Now, if you lose 1, okay, we got a debate. TCU wins out, they're in the playoff. But then that 4th spot, here's the debate. USC will have 2 losses. It depends on when that second loss comes. If it comes to the Pac-12 championship game, that'll be far more damaging. But still, 2-loss USC. Who lost to Utah? Utah's a very good football team, but Utah lost to Florida. Folks, let me tell you from a Tennessee fan, and it gives me great joy and pleasure to say this. Florida sucks. Okay? And Utah lost to them. And USC lost to Utah. So, we can do this debate all day. But what the committee said last night, Alabama has a real shot and still alive to get in the college football playoff, despite being a 2-loss non-division champ. We've always had a debate, well, can a 2-loss team get in the playoff? Well, yeah, if they win their conference tournament and their resumes looks good. Bama's resume isn't overwhelming. Honestly, their best win of the season is probably Texas. But their 2 losses, albeit losses, are probably the 2 most impressive losses of any team who has a chance to get in the playoff. At Tennessee, at LSU. So, they're going to get in. They don't call the Alabama Invitational for no reason. All right? They don't call that for no reason. But, when you talk about and I'll put it up there again. I'll put up the Alabama's path to the playoff once again. They got to beat Auburn, which they will. USC's got to lose 1 of their remaining 2 games. Michigan's got to lose to Ohio State. I say Michigan because their resume today isn't as good as Ohio State. And frankly, what they put on film as of late isn't as good as Ohio State. LSU's got to lose to Georgia. That looks highly likely. And then finally, TCU losing 1 of their remaining 2 games. And even that one, I'm not certain is mandatory. We'll put it that way. But what a run this is going to, what a last weekend of college football this is going to be. What a crazy season this has been. As my man Reese Davis from ESPN always says, and I always agree with him, And we think about a month ago, we're like, oh, there's these debates and Tennessee and Georgia and Michigan and Oregon and all the. As Reese Davis always says, this playoff, as crazy it is, 4 teams, it always plays itself out to where once we get to Selection Sunday, we're all, for the most part, in agreement of who the 4 best teams are. Now, in this case, I'm not sure if we will be, because Alabama still has a shot to get in. But I'm here to tell you right now, the Alabama Crimson Tide will participate in this year's college football playoff. And what a wild turn of events that would be. Weren't they outside of the top 10 recently, if I'm not mistaken? Let's see. How low did Alabama get? I got to check where they were at. Obviously, got the Iron Bowl on Saturday, which usually is like a must-watch game because those tend to be classic battles, especially in the last decade. Okay, the lowest Alabama drop was 9. And they beat Ole Miss, then they went up to 8. Now they're up to 7. Trust me, in 2 weeks' time, they'll move up 3 spots and get in the college football playoff. And then we'll get Georgia, Alabama in the semifinal game. I will certainly favor Georgia, but sign me up. Sign me up for that. We have got some breaking news. Before I get to my NFL prediction, we've actually got some breaking news that just came in right now. This is from Adam Schefter, says, quote, Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers confirmed today that he has been playing with a broken right thumb. Okay. Well, this kind of goes to what I've been saying about the Packers ever since going into the Dallas game. And even after they won the Dallas game, I said, you need to sit Aaron after the Philadelphia game. They lost to Tennessee. They're now 4-7. They're not going to beat the Eagles. So if Philadelphia takes care of his business, does what they should do, Green Bay will be 4-8, third in their division, and their season will be over. Bench Aaron, get a high draft pick if Jordan Love stinks. If he doesn't stink, hey, we got a franchise quarterback, and you trade him after the season. That's what I'm rolling with. My man, James Scott, across the Pond Sports Network. Shout out to all the guys and gals over there. They do a great job. James asked, what happened to the Vols? Sir, that is I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, listen, the best explanation I can give you is that Tennessee's captain of their defense, Jeremy Banks, who's a linebacker, was out for this game due to an undisclosed injury. There's a lot of rumors going around Twitter about if he was suspended, if he was actually injured. I have absolutely no clue. Listen, I trust Josh Heupel, the head coach, in making the decision that's best for the football program. But the depressing part about that loss to South Carolina is that the offense actually didn't play bad. They put up 38 points. You put up 38 points, that should win you every single game for the most part, unless you're playing like, an explosive offense or something. Unless you're playing like Ohio State. But to give up 63 points to the 11th best offense in the SEC, not in college football, in the SEC, to Spencer Rattler, who you guys know I'm not a Spencer Rattler fan at all. But Spencer Rattler coming into that game had 8 touchdown passes and 9 interceptions. After the game was over, he had 14 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. He almost doubled his touchdown total for the whole season in that game. In one game against my Vols to knock us out, completely out of the college football playoff mix. I wish I could have done the segments on Tennessee the way I just did it for Alabama. I wish I could tell you that Tennessee is 7 and still has a very good shot to get in, but we don't. We don't. It sucks. James says, my WNBA co-host, Michelle Snow, shout out to Michelle Snow, VFL, of All for Life, who dunked for the Vols, was very, very happy when they beat Alabama. Trust me, James, you have no idea. Listen, I wasn't there. I didn't have the privilege to be in Knoxville, Tennessee on the night of October 15th of 2022. But that game and that night and that celebration is, I've said it on the show, is one of my top two sports memories of my life. Literally. Just the build-up how crazy up and down, how the emotions flow all over the place during the game. And then the finish to win. I mean, again, to beat Bama, for Will Reichert, who's Alabama's kicker, to miss a field goal when the game is tied at 49. There's 15 seconds on the clock. And it's like, oh my gosh, when I remember looking at the clock, it said 15 seconds. I'm like, we're going to win the game. It's poetic justice. 15 years that we have been waiting to beat Alabama, and there's 15 seconds on the clock. And my man Hendon Hooker, knock on wood for him, praying for you, buddy. Please get well soon and kick butt in the NFL. I mean, Hendon Hooker, 2 passes down the field to Ramel Keaton and to Brew McCoy. Walk-off field goal by Chase McGrath to beat Alabama. Yes, I'm sure Michelle, it was a different type of joy for her, considering that she played in a Tennessee Vols uniform for the late, great Pat Summitt. But shout out to Michelle, shout out to all the VFLs, and shout out to what was a great, great night in Knox Vegas, as we call it. Now, we got 3 NFL games on Thursday. Tomorrow, Thanksgiving Day. Again, once again, happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. A very happy Thanksgiving. But we've got 3 games on Thursday. Of course, there's a Lions game, and of course, there's a Cowboys game. And then you got a really interesting nightcap game between 2 teams with winning records. So, here we go. Let's get the predictions going. We'll start with the Buffalo Bills coming to the Motor City to take on the Detroit Lions. Buffalo on the road is favored at -9.5. If this were a Sunday game, I might make it if I were a bet man, because take Detroit in the points all day. Here's why. Detroit has won their last 3 games, including 2 on the road. This is significant because the Lions had not won a road game until the season under Dan Campbell. Jared Goff is playing mistake-free football. They're running the ball really well. Jamal Williams had 3 touchdowns against the New York Giants last week, and the Giants have a pretty good run defense. He did a great job against them. That offensive line, led by Penei Sewell, is really starting to find its mojo and its momentum, and they're going to need it against this Bills defensive line, which has played well all season, led by Von Miller, of course. But you've got Buffalo, and I'm telling you, something's off about the Bills in the last 4 weeks. They struggled against Green Bay, and then they lost to the Jets, which not saying that the Jets are bad, it's just their quarterback's bad. You can't lose to Zach Wilson. Can't have your Zach Wilson not play your superstar franchise quarterback. And then they lose the following week. Then they beat Cleveland on Sunday. It's a good win for them. Ironically, in Detroit. But then they got, once again, in Detroit against the Lions. I think Detroit's offense keeps it close for a while. We know for the Lions, it's their biggest game of the year. It's, first of all, they're 4-6, so this is kind of an elimination type game. They're facing a team that a lot of people think is going to get to the Super Bowl out of the AFC. Okay, and they know it's national television, Thanksgiving Day. Take the Lions and the points. 9.5 is a lot on the road against a team that's playing well. But I will take the Bills straight up and outright to win this game by a final score of 28-23 over the Detroit Lions. I think it's a fascinating game, back and forth, but Buffalo wins it in the end. Before I get to my next game, we got a comment here. Yes, from James Scott, Across the Pond Sports Network. He says, happy Thanksgiving, big man. Cowboys winning all the way. Well, it's funny, sir, that you bring up the Cowboys, because they are my, as we're going to debut a new segment for Thanksgiving, my gobble it up, not carving it up, my gobble it up game of the year. And it is certainly the biggest game on Thursday. It's the New York Giants. It's the Dallas Cowboys. 2 of the biggest brands of the National Football League go toe-to-toe. Both teams sitting there with a 7-3 record. We know this game will, in all likelihood, be the highest-rated game of the NFL regular season, because it always is. It's Thanksgiving. It's the Cowboys. They're synonymous with one another. You got the star in the helmets playing the team from the Big Apple. Just for perspective, last year's Cowboys-Raiders game was the highest rated NFL regular season game since 1994. So listen, if this game tomorrow breaks that record, I will at all be shocked, because of the magnitude of it, because of the brands, and because of how big this game for both these teams, for a couple of reasons. A, the winner of this game keeps pace with the Eagles in the NFC East. The loser is focused on getting a wild card spot from this point moving forward. And then secondly, possibly the winner of this game gets Odell Beckham Jr. because OBJ has made it as clear as day. These are his two finalists about where he's going to play this season, the rest of the year. Either a reunion with the Giants or it comes to the Hollywood of the NFL, as I've heard it been called, the Dallas Cowboys. I think it's Dallas. I think OBJ fits better in Dallas. He's not as much of a... They won't rely on him as much in Dallas as they would with a incredibly thin receiving core with the Giants. And that kind of leads me to this. The Giants did not play well last week against Detroit, as I mentioned. But they're sitting there with Daniel Jones. What they call him, Vanilla Vic, because he's actually pretty mobile. He doesn't look mobile, but he is. He's fast. He can run. But if you ask Daniel Jones to win you a game, folks, he's not capable of doing that. If Saquon Barkley isn't running down people's throats, if the defense isn't getting multiple takeaways a game, if Brian Daboll doesn't have the perfect game plan, they can't win. Daniel Jones cannot be successful. This is an interesting game for the Dallas Cowboys because in recent years, they've really struggled on Thanksgiving Day. If you think about 2012, they lost to Washington. In 2014, they lost to the Eagles. In 2015, they lost to the Panthers. In 2017, they lost to the Chargers. And then they've lost all of the last 3 years to the Bills, Washington, and Raiders. So, just for Thanksgiving Day's sake, this is a big game because you want to break that losing streak. But for the Cowboys, a 40-3 beatdown of the Minnesota Vikings. Expectations have raised a little bit. Jerry Jones hyping this team up, saying, oh, we're going to the Super Bowl, as Jerry is apt to do from time to time during a hot streak during the season. Whole country's watching. If you're a Super Bowl contender, these are the games you got to win. 4 offensive linemen are out for the New York Giants. The receiving core is probably the thinnest in football this side of the New England Patriots. Daniel Jones is not playing well. They're missing some starters on defense. And the Cowboys beat the Giants in Week 3 with Cooper Rush at quarterback. So now you got Dak behind, Dak in the saddle, if you will. One more stat before I give you my final score. The Dak haters don't want you to know this, but I'm a Dak supporter, so I will let you know. Since, and I will say his full given name, Rayne Dakota Prescott, since he returned from his thumb injury in Week 7, the Dallas Cowboys have the best offense in the National Football League, averaging 35 points per contest. So facing a Giants defense, in which how many did they score with Cooper Rush on the road last time? They scored 23. Expect a little more. Expect to enjoy, if you're a Cowboys fan, expect to enjoy this along with your turkey. By this point, towards the end of the game, you'll probably be eating some pumpkin pie. I know I will. I love pumpkin pie. It's underrated. The Cowboys are going to win this game easily. 38-17. There's too many injuries for the Giants. Obviously, I forgot to mention, Cowboys are favored -10. But this is a bigger game for Dallas for the Giants because there's bigger expectations always for the Cowboys than there are the Giants. If Dallas wins this game, 2 wins in 5 days to go to 8-3, they will have their sights not only on Odell Beckham Jr., who at that point will likely choose the Cowboys over his old team, the Giants, but possibly on the #1 seed in the NFC. Minnesota's likely to lose a game or two from here on out, and Dallas will have the tiebreaker over them. And the Cowboys, certainly, given Philadelphia's schedule and given Dallas' schedule in the 3 weeks following this game, can catch the Eagles for that NFC East. So, big game for the Cowboys. Unlike usual, I think they will respond. Why? Simply put, the Giants are beat up, and I got Dak Prescott, and you don't if you're the New York Giants. Last game, I just mentioned the Minnesota Vikings. They got a home game on Thanksgiving Day. They take on the New England Patriots. All right, Vikings in this game are favored -2.5. This is an interesting one. I've got a theory. It's not necessarily my theory, but it's often been the history of this league. Very prideful guys are NFL players and are NFL coaches. And when they're humiliated, especially if they're humiliated on national television, if it's a Monday night game, Sunday night game, If it's a big primetime game, heck, if it's a game against the Dallas Cowboys, because they get a lot of primetime games, in which the Vikings did on Sunday, big CBS game, Nance and Romo on the call, everybody's watching, you're 8-1, and you get beat by 37 at home. Teams like that, listen, nobody in life likes to get embarrassed, but NFL players, I mean, listen, we all get embarrassed in life. How'd you like to get embarrassed in front of millions of people? By a team that's kind of rubbing it in your face by the time the game's over. That sticks with you. And when you get the opportunity just 4 days later to play again in that same stadium, US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, you're going to take it out on somebody. And so I'm looking at them playing the Patriots. Folks, the Patriots offense is awful. Not that I didn't need to tell you that. I told you that back in August. They got a special teams coordinator and a defensive coordinator as their offensive coordinator. Explain that to me. Explain that to me. It makes no sense whatsoever. It doesn't. Okay? And you got Mac Jones playing awful football. Mac Jones this season. 4 touchdowns, 7 picks, an average QBR of 31, which is 29th in the NFL. And he is 29th also in passing yards. So he doesn't take care of the ball. He's bad in the red zone. He's inaccurate. And he tends to post bad QBRs. That's not a good combination considering the fact that you're going into a building where a really good football team is going to play really angry. Vikings cover the 2.5-point spread easily and win this game by a final score of 29-16 over the New England Patriots. Vikings win this one 29-16 to cap off a great day of Thanksgiving Day football. 29-16 over the Patriots. And again, for the Patriots schedule moving forward, this game kind of starts a stretch for New England where their schedule is brutal. So I mentioned Vikings tomorrow. Then they got the Bills at the Cardinals. Isn't too bad. Neither is the Raiders. But then you finish with Bengals, Dolphins, Bills. I'm still sticking to my preseason prediction. The New England Patriots are not going to make the playoffs this season. And it's their collapse. Or is it really collapse if we're not expecting them to get in? Well, I guess some people are expecting them to get in. So their collapse begins tomorrow. And a lot of that is because they got Mac Jones at quarterback. They can't go very far with him. That's my predictions. Got a comment here from James. He says, on our guess, the win margins, I took Cowboys by 10. Okay, I respect that. And again, that's exactly what they're favored by. So a Cowboys 10-point win, I think you'd feel good about. Again, James, for those of you who don't know, is a Cowboys fan. And again, the reason they're such big favorites is because the injuries of the Giants, how the Giants have been playing, how the Cowboys have been playing. They've been getting healthy as of late. That defense is playing out of its mind ever since they blew the 14-point lead against the Packers. You know, Micah Parsons said after that Packers loss, and this week, I talked about Zach Wilson, kind of circling back to the earlier segment with Zach Wilson about taking accountability. Great players, the best players, always take accountability for. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is one of the few exceptions, but he's all-time great. So, you know, some people choose to move past that. I don't, but some people do. Point is, you've got Micah Parsons, who to me is a top 10 player in the National Football League, asked during the week leading up to the Vikings game. They said, hey, the stats show that the defense was better with Cooper Rush at quarterback than with Dak. Is that because you've let off the gas pedal now that you've got your starting quarterback back and you know you don't have to play perfect in order to win because your offense is better with Dak? And he basically said, yeah, we kind of let our foot off the gas pedal, but be assured that won't happen again. So far, so good. You gave up a field goal to the Minnesota Vikings. You're pretty good performance. And so now you got the New York Giants. I expect the Cowboys to win this one fairly easily. In that case, 31-17. Man, what a weekend we have. And by the way, we will be back on Friday, Black Friday, which is Black Friday that important at this point now that we got Cyber Monday? I mean, why would you, I mean, at this point with technology, with Amazon, why would you get in line at 5 o'clock in the morning for their early deals when you could just do it online? They got deals online. That's why they got Cyber Monday. Just shop online. I don't know. I've never been a Black Friday fan. For those of you out there that are, hey, to each their own. But I'm always rolling with Cyber Monday. It's like, dude, you can literally, it's Black Friday, but within your pajamas. Or you can just, if you're at work and you're like, hey, I need to buy this for, this special person in my life. You just go on your phone and you order it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just weird. James says, our host, I hope I'm saying the name correctly, her name correctly. Sean Duthie, is that? I think that's how I say her name. Said on Monday she thought Wilson would be dropped. So there you go. And at the end of the day, when you have Zach Wilson playing the way he's playing, compounded with the fact that he doesn't seem all that upset, if you will, after the loss at himself. It's like, man, this kid not only does not take accountability, he's kind of tone deaf. He doesn't have the self-awareness that you would want in a franchise quarterback. And James says, the UK doesn't have Thanksgiving, although I will be having turkey, but we have adopted Black Friday. Well, listen, that's the thing with Black Friday. I got no issue with the, I guess it's kind of, I don't want to say it's a holiday. It's some people do, so I guess it's a holiday. But I've got no issue with the concept of Black Friday. But when we've been presented with, at least in my opinion, a better alternative, I ask you, James, have they adopted Cyber Monday in the UK? I mean, if you're going to adopt Black Friday, but I guess it only makes sense. I don't know. But yeah, I've always thought about that. Thanksgiving, a little bit of presidential history. Abraham Lincoln was the first one to make Thanksgiving a holiday, first president to make it a holiday. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he was also the first president to pardon the turkey, which has been continued by every president since then. But yeah, a little Thanksgiving history. But listen, we're going to have a packed show for you guys on Friday. Going to react to all the games on Thanksgiving. Let's see. James says Cyber Monday has become more of a thing the last couple of years. Yeah. And listen, it should be. It's more efficient. You don't have to drive. You don't have to travel. I mean, heck, you don't even have to get ready. You don't have to leave your bed in order to take care of a lot of Christmas shopping. That's the beauty of it. I don't know. I'm all about efficiency and working smart, not hard. I don't know. I've always been wired that way. But with all my rambling aside about Cyber Monday and Black Friday, it is Thanksgiving tomorrow. And so to everybody watching, to everybody listening, very happy Thanksgiving to you. Please enjoy it with your loved ones, your family, your friends, and just enjoy the holiday. Enjoy your family. Enjoy, obviously, the amazing food that we all look forward to eating. And, of course, enjoy the football. Because I know if you watch the show, you likely watch football on Thanksgiving Day. So catch us on Friday, on Black Friday, by the way, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. And also, be sure to like, share, comment, and hit that big red subscribe button. Takes you 2 seconds to do. Subscribe to the Carving It Up podcast on YouTube. Also, be sure to subscribe to the Grid Podcast Network. That is the Grid, GRYD, the Grid Network on YouTube. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to the Grid, the network that I am a part of. Again, put this hat on. Sorry, Dak, I'll put you aside here. Put my Grid hat on. Again, I'm a part of this network with Barry Grant Jr., Mike Guido, Patrick Brown. Who else is on it? Ryan Flowers, the Can Fan guys, Alfred Parsar Jr., okay, amazing creators, amazing guys. So check out their shows on the Grid Network. Chaotic Sports Podcast, Clutch Sports Talk, All Even Podcast, Cowboys Can Fan, Rocket Field Jets Podcast, and of course, Carving It Up. So check out all of our shows on the Grid Network. And be sure to catch the show tomorrow and listen to Carving It Up on the Grid Network on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. That's where you can find my show after it's over. So have a great week, everybody. Have a great Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Please stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out. Gobble, gobble. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.